Hey, my name is Stephanie Simmons, and I'm completely obsessed with living in a culture of freedom and helping you maneuver your way through the chaos to the calm. As a small city mom of 6, I took my life into my own hands, quit my job, and went all in on my side hustle, creating the freedom to not only make my own schedule, but to make time for the people and things that matter most in life. Working from home, I now have an online business teaching others how to realize their passions, map out their goals in business and in life, and make those goals their new reality. I'm just over here telling it exactly like it is as we dive in on topics like burnout, balancing it all, finding joy, and dreaming up those crazy cool next chapters of your life. Business, mindset, breaking barriers, and showing up for yourself and the people you care about are all things we talk about here. Ready to become the curator of your best life? Lean in, take a listen, and let me challenge you and cheer you on to creating a life you absolutely love. This is the Freedom Culture Podcast. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Freedom Culture Podcast. Today's episode, Rise Above Resistance, the life-changing magic of taking risks. And I am so excited to talk about this. I'm your host, Stephanie Simmons, and welcome to the Freedom Culture Podcast. Resistance is something that we have all felt at one time or another. And I was recently reading an amazing book called The War of Art. Yes, not The Art of War, The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. And this book, along with many others, was of course recommended to me by someone that I admire and was told was a must read. So I read the book, absolutely loved it, and it inspired this entire podcast episode, as well as a recent talk that I did live at a women's event on the same subject. So what is resistance? As it goes deeper in the book, in The War of Art, which the primarily first half of the book is all about describing this resistance and how it shows up in our lives and how it can affect us. But let's go a little deeper on what actually is resistance. So resistance is not something that you can see or touch, obviously, but it can be felt. It seems to come from outside ourselves, but in the form of someone else to blame, like a spouse or a boss or kids. But resistance comes from within. It is created by us through our fear. Resistance has no strength of its own. We feed it with power by our fear. If we master this, then we can conquer that resistance. It's universal and it affects everyone, so you're not alone. Resistance recruits allies. It shows up through family and friends by their doubt and questioning of the risks that we take. So if you've ever had a family member say to you something like, "Are you sure you want to do that? But what if this or what if that?" Essentially, that's them just projecting their own fear onto you. That's their own resistance showing up in a way of caring for you, in a way of being scared for you. But that's resistance recruiting allies to help its cause. I have an example of this. When I was in my early 20s, I had 2 young kids, I was single, and I was deciding to leave my full-time job and go back to school. And people close to me were uncomfortable with it. They were scared at that idea. Why leave a stable job with benefits when you have 2 young kids to support in order to take this risk? And they saw going back to school as a risk because obviously it wasn't attached to any income. But I would be okay. I got a school loan and everything worked out fine. But definitely that resistance can come through our family members too. Procrastination is the most common manifestation of resistance because it's easiest to rationalize. So it's easier for us to say, I will do it, but I'll start tomorrow. And if you've ever said that, that's just procrastination. We know we want to do something. We're procrastinating it for various reasons, but it's just a resistance of actually sitting down and doing the work or standing up, whatever it might be. But you get the concept, I think. Resistance has no conscience. It is always lying and always full of shit. Meaning that resistance can tell us many things. It can tell us we're not good enough. It can tell us now's not the right time. Or it can tell us that we're not ready, right? Resistance tells us so many things to help prevent us from taking steps forward and conquering that resistance that we feel and that just keeps showing up for us. So the book, The War of Art, it really comes from an artist's perspective, but think of yourself as a creator. It doesn't mean you have to be an artist. It doesn't mean that you have to be, a musician. I think of everyone as a creator. Number one, you're creating your life. Every day, you're creating the life that you live, the work that you're in, the business that you have, your children. You are creating spaces for the people who you love to show up in. So if we look at ourselves as that kind of a creator, when I talk about art, that's what I want you to think of. Our lives are our canvas. We get to create our lives the way that we want. And if you don't believe that, well, just take a look around yourself right now and let me know whether you think that the decisions that you have made have created what's around you. Because I 100% believe that we have a choice in everything that we do. Resistance is famous for allowing us to put that blame on someone else. If we don't have the life we want, if we don't have the car we want, if we don't have the money we want, that is all because of external circumstances. But when you really peel back the layers and look deeper, it is resistance and it's fear. And it's us not conquering that fear and not moving past the resistance of becoming the next higher version of ourselves, the person that we feel we truly can be. So, to rise above resistance, the more you love your art, your calling, your business, the more important it is, the more important the accomplishment of it is to the evolution of your soul. It's that important. But also, the more you will fear it, the more resistance you will experience facing it because of its importance. So I want to talk about a section in the book called The Unlived Life. And there's a quote from Steven Pressfield that says, "Most of us have two lives, the life we live and the unlived life within us. Between those two stands resistance." And I thoroughly believe this. I think that all of us have this unlived life within us. It's unlived because we are guarding it. We aren't moving forward into those experiences that help us live that life that's within us. So he talks about, are you a writer who doesn't write, a painter who doesn't paint, an entrepreneur who never starts a venture? Resistance defeats us. But does it have to entirely cripple us and cripple everything before we acknowledge that resistance exists? I was in a job that I no longer liked. I was running my business on the side, nights, weekends, evenings, everything. And I had several children by this time. And I was really close to burnout for sure. I was resisting tough decisions. I was going out a lot, trying to get away from all of the tough things that were happening in my life. I was spending money, I was drinking. But to combat the resistance, at the time I didn't know what else to do. I was turning 40. And I decided in 2019 that I was going to hop on a plane and take a solo trip by myself. So for my 40th birthday, I booked a ticket to Paris and I flew there, and then I got on a river cruise and ended up in Spain. And it was amazing. It allowed me the time that I needed to figure out my next steps. I knew I wasn't happy in my job. I knew it was going to be a risk if I decided to leave. I knew that I had more inside of me that I wanted to do. And the longer that I stayed there, the less I would be moving past the resistance I was feeling. And I knew it. I knew that I wouldn't have described it as resistance. I never even considered the word until I read this book. I was like, what is this feeling? It's not just fear. It's a little bit more than that. It feels like this external source, right, that is pitted against us, that's preventing us from doing what we want to do. Every time you turn around, it seems like there's something combating us, right? There's something coming at us that we need to deal with, another hurdle, another fire, as people would describe. But that's all a point of view too, right? That's a decision that we also can make. Is everything difficult? If we've manifested that in saying every time I go to do something, it's difficult, well, we don't want to put that idea out into the world, right? We want to believe that we are in ease and flow and things should come to us easily. And things can. So I want to ask you, Have you ever worked in a job that you didn't like at some point? Are you far away from what you dreamed of being as an adult? What you dreamed of being when you were a child? Are you there? And there's some questions to ponder as well. How has resistance shown up for you? Has it held you back from doing something that you want to do? Has resistance shown up from a friend or family member? I think many of my podcast episodes prompt you to journal a little bit and ask yourself these questions, because I think it's super important for us to do that. I think that it's important for us to take risks. And that is the true way that we can combat resistance, is if we say, you know what, I'm feeling this resistance towards something, but you want to do it. And that fear is fueling the resistance, right? In order for us to combat resistance, we need to deal with the fear. We need to look fear in the eye and give it a wink and keep moving. Keep moving forward and don't pay it any mind. It's not easy, of course. Getting over our fears is something that we all have to deal with at many points in our lives. But let us never forget that every moment of our lives, we have a choice and we have the power to alter our future outcomes. In this moment, we can choose to rise above resistance. And I really do believe that. So how can we rise above resistance? If we know that fear fuels the resistance, but what we also might not realize is that fear is also an indicator. Fear tells us clearly what we must do. The more fear we have around something, the more sure that we can be that we have to do it. The more resistance you feel towards something, the more gratification you will feel when you accomplish it. Think about that. We finally leaped over the hurdle and figured out that we can overcome resistance and we can combat it by simply taking action. So in the book, The War of Art, Steven Pressfield talks about the way to combat resistance is to start to think like and act like and become a professional. And what he means by a pro is, as an ideal, a pro versus an amateur. For example, an amateur would be regarded as someone who's not serious, right? You're amateur, you haven't honed your skills, you're just playing at it. It's not serious. But a pro takes it seriously. And we want you to become fearless, right? I mean, fear, it's a good thing. It shows up to protect us, innately protects us from danger that can threaten our lives. But when we really think about the fears we're facing right now in our life, are they really life-threatening? Is the fear of public speaking life-threatening? No, of course not. But it's real, right? And I would encourage everyone to take some time and write down some of the fears that you know that you have right now. Because when we acknowledge the fear and we take action against it, that's how we can move towards rising above resistance and becoming fearless. You don't become fearless and then take action. You take action and become fearless. I believe that courage builds confidence. Having the courage to take action, big or small, is what begins our journey towards being confident and mastering something new. When was the last time you took a risk? I can think about many risks that I've taken over the years. In fact, I think some of my friends would describe me as like, you're always taking risks. I mean, they don't say it like that, but they're like, wow, it's risky, and I can see the visible uncomfort. And it's not that I'm not uncomfortable, I am. But I know I need to do it regardless of the discomfort. And we need to really be aware of that discomfort and that resistance and the fear, and we need to talk to it. We need to understand it. If we know that fear fuels resistance, then how do we combat the fear? So I think one of the major risks that I've taken in my life was separating from my husband and eventually divorcing. I had just had my 6th child, and I'm sure I was going through much more than just resistance. I definitely, looking back, I actually feel like I was probably dealing with some postpartum depression, for sure. I was at a point in my life when I really didn't know what I was going to do with myself, what I really wanted to do for a career. I had tried so many things. I had realized that I was an entrepreneur, and that's something that I wanted to pursue for sure. And there's many, many reasons that separation felt like the right decision for me. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make. And I don't talk about this very much, I don't think. I realized that I just couldn't see my way forward anymore. And that was really scary. And I was scared of it. I just didn't know how to move forward. I just knew that I needed to understand myself. And I know it's a common thing to say that I had to separate in order to find myself. But it wasn't finding myself. I knew who I was. I knew what I wanted. Often I could tell you exactly what I want and don't want. But I really didn't understand myself. I didn't understand all of the emotions I was feeling. And there was a lot I had to learn. I was very emotionally immature, even though I would have described myself very differently at that time. But I did not know how to deal with my own emotions, let alone everyone else's. We had a big household. There were 6 of us, plus the 2 of us. Like, it's a lot. 6 of children plus the 2 of us. There was a lot going on. But I knew that I had to do it. So we separated, and I just began taking risks. After that, it was one risk after the other. I jumped into starting my first business right away. I immediately started my first business. And that's 10 years ago now. And I think that it allowed me to explore myself. Being an entrepreneur is many things. But the biggest thing that I think it is it's a way for us to look that resistance in the face and say, I acknowledge that you're there, but I'm going to do this anyway. And that's what being an entrepreneur is to me. It's really rising above resistance every time. You have to, because there's nothing there for you to fall back on. And I think that was really important to me, is that I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet. I wanted to face all of those fears. And I didn't know how to do that as a couple. I didn't know how to take all of these risks and have to explain them to someone else if they failed. If I failed at something, I was not just responsible to myself. And whether that's immature thinking or not, that's just what I needed. So I began taking risks. In 2019, I took all the risks. That was the year that I flew to Paris. And I also quit my full-time job. I decided, nope, I can't do this anymore. I'm not living the way that I want to live. I'm not expressing myself. So I had no savings, I had no security, just me and my faith. And all these little eyes looking up at me as, what are you doing next, Mom? But it was a fun time, honestly. I don't know if I felt more alive than in 2019, because I was doing all of the things that I'd always wanted to do. I'd always wanted to have my business. So by that time, the first business I had started was about 4 years old or so, something like that. And I decided to start another business. So in 2019, I started a brand new business called Sugar That. It's a body sugaring hair removal business. I really wanted to give my daughter an opportunity to do something that I thought she could be really great at. So we started the biz, ran that for a few years along with my other business. And then a few years later, I thought, you know what? I'm going to start Freedom Culture. And I started by myself, started working on my own. I risked a lot to start the business. I paid a lot of money in courses and trainings and books and all of the things. I just dove into learning so much. And it's been an amazing journey. And then finally in 2023, I hired my first person. And this is a huge thing. There was a lot of resistance I experienced around hiring and getting some help. And I remember thinking, I can't afford this, but I'm going to find the money anyway because I know what I want to do. I have a clear vision for it, but I just can't do everything by myself. And it's time that I acknowledge that. What is the resistance that we feel around asking for help? Why do we feel so much resistance around asking for help? I think this is an extremely important topic for women to be discussing today. Are you feeling resistance around getting help? When somebody offers to help us, don't we say, oh no, it's okay, I've got it. No, it's all right, don't worry, I'll ask you if I need help. Do we ever actually ask? What is the problem with us getting help? And this is something I've had to tackle with myself over the years so many times. It's okay for us to allow others to help us. Otherwise, we're going down a nasty road of burnout, depression, right? Overwork is taking over right now. And I don't like focusing on the negative of what's happening in the world. I really don't. But I will acknowledge that I know so many people who are overworked, overtired, and just plain burnout. And most of them are women who are mothers, who are in business, whether it's their own business or they're working for someone. That seems to be the prime example I'm seeing right now. And I just want to ask, is it because we have this fear of depending on other people? Like, what does it stem from? And I'm just truly posing these questions to everyone because it is still a mystery to me. I know what it is for myself. I know I wanted to be independent. I wanted to do everything myself so that I could say I did it and I built it. But there's not one successful business that was built by one person. It's never one person. It's impossible, right? There's always someone who's helped you, even if it's for emotional support, even if it's our mom or our dad or our siblings that have given us encouraging words along the way. We all give gratitude to someone who has stood by us during the process, even if it looks like it's our own business and we did it all ourselves. But where's the glory in that? Where's the glory in doing it all ourselves? I had to learn this lesson the hard way about not getting help, not accessing the help around me, and not ensuring that I'm actually purposefully getting help from the people who in my own household. I think that there has been a bit of a shift too with our children. I mean, I have lots of children. I have 2 adult children and 4 school-age children. And it's a different situation now than maybe it was when my adult children were young. But I know it's even further different from when I was young. You know, we had chores, we had things we had to do to help the household. And I see this less and less. Moms taking on everything because we want it done a certain way, right? We want it the way we want it. And there's a lot of control in that. And I think that some of the resistance to having people help us in our household with just your daily things is that control. And do we really need to have it? Does it really matter how a towel is folded? Does it really matter how a bed is made, as long as it's made? You know, some of those things I think that we have to let go of in order for us to have more peace, in order for us to be less stressed, and to just access that help and put a little bit more pressure on our children to help us. It's something I'm certainly struggling with. And I think that it's important. It's important for them to feel like they're a contributing member of the household. And it's okay for us to put a bit of that stress on them. It's not going to hurt them. It's going to teach them things that we all had to learn, right? At some point in our lives, whether we had to learn it as an adult or not, we have to take care of our homes and our spaces, right? We have to take care of them or they're not going to take care of us. And if we don't clean up, if we don't put things away and we don't declutter and do all of the things, it's just going to stress us out because our spaces will do that. And a great book, of course, because it's all about me recommending books, is The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. Amazing book. Changed my life. Another one that changed my life. It absolutely did. It allowed me to see that I needed to actually take some time, spend some time and effort into changing my spaces and making them less stressful. Because a cluttered space and a space that's unorganized and doesn't serve you affects us. Even if we don't think it does, it's there. It's always there, the mess, right? And I think that it's important to recognize the tasks in our home even that we can unload on someone else. It's not even, that's the worst way to describe it, probably unload on someone else. It's that we can assign to someone specific that can find pride in that and allow them to assist us that way. So I think that it becomes a really important thing for us to dissect our home life and to see where the areas are where we can let go of some of the control. Because it really is control for us. And I think that's the resistance. It stems from that control and that fear of not having it. So it all stems back to fear, right? The fear of allowing someone to help us, the fear of having to depend on someone else when we know ultimately we can really only depend on ourselves. That may be very true, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't take the risk of depending on someone. And we have to let go of all of the guilt. Let's not feel guilty for allowing other people to help us. We have to. I don't know about you, but I had to learn the effects of burnout the hard way. And I don't want that for anyone. I really don't. I was burnt out and facing a lot of things, and I fell asleep on the couch and ended up with a kitchen full of smoke. And that's a story for another time, but it happened because I was burnt out. It happened because I was overwhelmed with life and all of the things that needed to be done. And it was shocking. I couldn't believe that it happened. And you know what? That night could have turned out very differently. Maybe I didn't wake up and the smoke consumed me and I died. But I did wake up. Maybe I woke up to share the story. Maybe I woke up to help other people not get to that point. I truly believe that. That's why I'm here. And that's why this is part of this episode too, is in order for us to rise above the resistance that we're feeling, we also need to accept help from other people. And when I did hire that first employee that I had, that was a risk, of course. But that all stemmed from another life-changing book called Who Not How. And that book changed my life too. It allowed me to see that there's more to me that I need to share with the world, and I can't do that while I'm bogged down with all of these tasks that weren't meant for me. So although I can do the dishes and clean the house and all of that, I don't enjoy it, and I don't want to do it. So why am I doing it? Why aren't I spending more time doing something I actually want to do? And it's not about ditching our responsibilities to have fun or whatever. It's about doing meaningful work that lights us up. And I really do think that's what it's about. So that book, Who Not How, allowed me to see that it was time for me to rely on someone else. And I hired my first person in my online business, Freedom Culture. And it was the best decision I ever made. And that led to hiring another person. And now they work together as a team with me, and it's amazing. And I don't know where I would be or what I would be doing had I not made that decision that day to do that. So I think that it's really important for us to journal on this and to sort of dissect where we're feeling the resistance in our lives, how to conquer those fears, how to take action, even if it's small steps at a time. It could be a big leap, or it could be small steps. But The Big Leap is another book that I was introduced to that also is fairly life-changing, I would say. And it's all about living and working in your zone of genius. So your zone of genius is where you are lighting up with the work, where you are fulfilling the reason that you are put on this earth, right? Your true purpose. My zone of competence, I think that's where the dishes lie. Doing dishes is my zone of competence for sure. Am I competent in doing dishes? Sure. It's not challenging me, however. And the Big Leap book talks all about this. It talks about the different zones and how to get to your zone of genius and what that looks like and how meaningful it can be for you. So lots of books in this episode. I'll make sure to tag them all below, but I love to read. And if you do too, check out my website, stephsimmons.co, for a future announcement. Otherwise, if you're listening to this not in present time, it might already be live. So check it out. And I hope to be able to impact you in a very different way there as well. So that wraps up this episode of the Freedom Culture Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And what risk are you going to take today? Big or small? Whether it's something you've been fearing for a long time, but you know you need to push into it and you need to experience something that might not be something you perceive as easy, but the rewards on the other side of it, what's on the other side of fear, generally in my experience is always worth it. It really is. I don't think I've ever had an experience where I feared something and I did it and then I regretted it. I don't think I can honestly say I've ever regretted anything when I've taken the risk, when I've gone out, It's always taught me something. Even if it is perceived as a failure, it's always taught me something. And to me, it's worth it if I learn something. So I want that for you too. Take those bold risks, take action, and you'll never know where it might lead you. Thanks for listening. Bye for now. Yes, you just made it to the end of another episode of the Freedom Culture Podcast, and I'm so happy that you did. My goal with each episode is always to offer some type of inspiration for you in your life and your work. Thanks for tuning in, and if you found the show helpful or you're looking for any other resources mentioned in this episode, just hop on over to my website at stephaniesimmons.co and sign up. That way you can get notified when there's new episodes, or you can follow me over on Instagram at stephaniesimmons.co and just simply send me a direct message there with the word podcast to stay in the loop. Again, thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you next time on the Freedom Culture Podcast.